Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the October edition of the Divorce Support Club. The Divorce Support Club is an offering made by Walker Family Law as an additional service to their legal services. It's a safe, informal place for you to ask any questions, to gather a toolkit to help manage your emotions, get clarity around anything that worries or scares you, and to focus on what you can do so that you can move through the process of separation and divorce with confidence. My name is Claire Macklin. I'm a breakup and divorce coach. I'm a qualified NLP master practitioner. I've been divorced twice, and I'm a single mum to two boys. I'm also the author of Breakup from Crisis to Confidence, which I'll try and show you here, but I've blurred my background. Um, which is a book full of strategies to support you through any breakup. And our role here, really, with the Divorce Support Club is to support you through the emotional ups and downs of your breakup with confidence and dignity and strength. So I'm joined today by Lauren. Lauren, if you'd like to introduce yourself too, that would be brilliant.
Yes, thanks very much, Claire. I'm Lauren Preedy. I'm a partner in the Divorce and Relationships team. And Claire and I have been involved in running the Divorce Support Club since it started. So I just wanted to mention that our previous discussions that we've had can all be found on our podcast, and various times topics we link together. So have a look at those as well for interesting and informative information. I've been divorced as well. I'm currently remarried, and I've got two stepchildren who are 8 and 11.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Lauren. So just a very quick bit of housekeeping. We have enabled the chat feature. If you press on Q&A, you can ask any questions that you would like to, and we will try and answer those as best we can. So today we are going to talk about the menopause and divorce. And I think the first thing that's really important for both Lauren and I to say is that we're not doctors, so we're not here to diagnose or to do anything that would be beyond the scope of our expertise. But we do both see the impact of menopause on many of the clients that we work with. We also experience it with our colleagues and our friends. And we see it in the women that we support, and also we see the impact that it can have on their partners. There's an ever increasing amount of information available on the menopause, its symptoms and its impact. And at the end of the session, we will give you some resources that you could go away and look at for yourselves.
And the other thing as well, Claire, as we talked about, is that we are in Menopause Awareness Month, and in the press, and there's various online again information that we've talked about that we'll give you at the end. So a lot of information, and it's become a real point of awareness, I think, in the workplace, in society in general. And I think it's a really good thing to mention that, of course, it used to be something that wasn't really very well talked about. And you mentioned the impact on men as well. And I know when we were preparing for this session that we thought it was really important to make sure that men that are watching this, we know that the impacts of the menopause have on men and also the wider family as well.
Absolutely. That point about it being talked about much more, I think my own mother has never even said the word menopause to me. So, it's much more widely talked about. I talk about it with my children, who are both boys, from time to time. So I think there's a lot more open conversation about it now, which can only be a good thing. So the first important thing perhaps is just to very briefly cover what it is. So menopause is part of the natural aging process for a woman, usually occurring between the ages of 45 and 55. And medically, it's said to have occurred when a woman's menstrual cycle has ceased for 12 consecutive months. And it's caused essentially due to lower hormone levels. And in the UK, the average age for a woman to reach the menopause is 51. And funny enough, that's exactly how old I am. And I think I am probably right at the end of that 12-month period. So almost going into sort of post-menopause
And the other
area of
thing,
my life.
the other thing as well, we were saying about age is, so I'm 44, and there's also a lot that's been recently talked about, the perimenopause, which is the kind of, well, the trying to think how best the period that comes before the menopause, but women can have symptoms for a long time before the actual menopause starts. So
That's right. And I
again,
think it's caused by the sort of fluctuation in hormone levels.
mm,
They begin to change, often around 45, from what I've from my reading. And then after that period of 12 months, there's a postmenopause period. And I think it's worth mentioning as well that for some women, this can start instantly, without a perimenopause period. For example, if you have some kind of surgical operation, perhaps a hysterectomy, something like that, or you have medical interventions, perhaps like chemotherapy, those things can bring it on without a perimenopausal period. And there are, of course, some women, 1 in 20 is the figure that I've seen, who experience early or premature menopause when it occurs at a younger age than usual. And I think it's interesting to note those ages in terms of linking that to perhaps divorce statistics, because peak age when women are most likely to get divorced is in their mid 40s up to 55. And the average age when a woman gets divorced is 45.3. Um, and so it begs the question, is that coincidental or is there a link between the two?
mm. And we'll come
In
on to
terms,
talk. Oh, sorry, Claire.
no, go on.
Yeah, I just wanted to link that in at that stage to the other issues that, of course, when you're at that age, you may have children leaving home and elderly parents to look at. So I know when you and I were preparing for today, there was a well, we didn't quite know what order to put things in, did we? Because it all linked up
Yeah,
so well into different areas. And I think that when it comes on to me talking a bit about the law, I think also that links into women in the workplace and their workability, and I've got some statistics that I can talk about in that area as well.
fantastic. Thank you very much. Yeah, and I think that's a really important point. Quite often, the menopause coincides with other things in life that can be challenging. Like you say, elderly parents who perhaps need more care. Um, Children leaving home and kind of empty nest feelings, but also children becoming teenagers because lots of us are having children much later now. Menopause can coincide for many of us with our children being sort of between 15 and 19, which is for some teenagers a difficult transition period. So I think it's important perhaps to just talk a little bit about what some of the symptoms are because it's different for everybody. It's different which symptoms you may experience, how severe they might be, and also how long they might last. So the statistics I've seen are that 3 out of 4 women experience some symptoms, and 1 in 4 will experience quite severe symptoms. Because those hormonal changes lead to a variety of different outward symptoms, and the NHS, I think, lists about 48 symptoms. So it can be very wide ranging, and they include things like fatigue, night sweats, hot flushes, headaches and migraines, skin irritation, dry eyes, urinary problems, muscle and joint stiffness and pain, weight changes, thinning hair, heavy or perhaps painful periods, insomnia and difficulty sleeping. I've certainly experienced that one myself. Difficulty concentrating and forgetfulness, what's commonly kind of described as brain fog. And I've experienced that too, actually, the kind of searching around for a word and not being able to find a word in my mind can be really quite frustrating. Anxiety or depression and mood swings, um, anger, panic attacks, and also changes in libido. So often there's a decrease in desire or discomfort um, during sex. And I think when we were talking prior to this, Lauren, you were talking about some people that you know, for example, that have experienced quite severe symptoms.
Yes, yeah. So somebody that I know very well as from a very early age of just into her 40s actually, it, really dramatically with pretty much all of the symptoms on the list. She could tick them off, unfortunately, but almost at one stage she was bedridden from some of the symptoms that were caused, linked to the fatigue, linked to muscles and joint stiffness, but
Mm.
also when she started getting she had every test under the sun to establish whether it was that or whether it was something else. And then she has been going through almost a 2-year program of changing her treatment in the HRT to get
Mm.
the hormone levels right. But she'd be doubled over with pain because her stomach would be hurting. She wouldn't be able to eat. Again, the sleep, and then that having a massive impact on her working life. And then somebody else I know has had, and again, you had to say the word for me last time, Claire, because I always forget how to say it. Rosec with
Conversation.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
but a really severe case where her whole face went red. And of course, that then meant she didn't want to go out. It affected her abilities at work because of how she felt, and also at times it being very painful as well.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah,
and
all of these things can really have an impact, can't they, on your self-confidence, your self-esteem, losing confidence perhaps in the skills that you have and the resources that you have, and socially and at work. I think you were telling me about some statistics as well, weren't you, in terms of the numbers of work days that can be lost every year due to
yes,
menopause
yeah. So
symptoms.
so yeah, the research that I had done was that so first of all, that a lot of the time, and women are hiding the symptoms, or saying it's something else. But often now there is a lot of training in the workplace. But it was 14 million work days are estimated to have been lost a year because of the symptoms. And it's the mental health side of it, which is also becoming a much more talked about area of anxiety and depression. And I can certainly say in my friendship group, the anxiety side of things, as people do go into the menopause, is definitely something that my friendship group talk about. And one of the kind of very dramatic ways of it being described in one of the articles I read was that the menopause has been called the silent career killer. And 1 in 4 women consider leaving work when they hit the menopause because of the symptoms and feeling as though physically they can't do the job, but also mentally with the anxiety and the things that comes with that. Um, so it's and that links in with obviously with the work that I do when I'm helping people resolve financial settlements, is the income issues and future earning capacity issues are something that we have to consider and advise on. So in various cases that I've been dealing with, this has come up as an issue of earning. And of course, if somebody has been working part-time at one point because of childcare, and then they go back to work full-time, but then go part-time, there's lots of issues that come up. And also, if I'm, of course, acting and advising a man, they have various concerns about the ability of their spouse to be able to work, and how that's going to impact their finances as well on separating. So it's, yeah, there's lots of very sensitive and difficult issues in this area of consideration in the law.
Yeah. And one of the things that's come across really clearly to me in talking about this is that every case is going to be very different, perhaps, and so looking at each case on a case by case basis is going to be really important and we'll come to talk a little bit more about what you can do if you're going through a divorce and experiencing some of these symptoms at the same time in a little while. But I want to come back just very quickly to the impact that this can have. We talked about a little bit about the impact of work, but it can also have a massive impact at home and have an impact on your relationships with your spouse, but also, with your children, perhaps. And a statistic I read was that 51% of women consider that menopause adversely impacts their sex life. And I hear echoes of this in my work all the time. One of the things that comes up for both men and women, actually, that I work with, um, and is talk we talk about in terms of their relationship, is the decline of intimacy and communication, perhaps that's at the core often of why relationships have broken down. And I just wondered whether that is reflected in what you see as well in your consultations.
Yes, I would say so. And there's been a shift in the law and in relation to it when you start the divorce process. And we've talked about this on on previous discussions, so I won't go into it in full detail. But basically, you used to have to give a blame reason for getting divorced, and one of those reasons was adultery, and one was unreasonable behaviour. And yeah, absolutely say that in discussions that I had with both male and female clients, issues to do with intimacy and sex and affairs would often be something that would be talked about. And often it would come up in the context of somebody meeting somebody that was younger, perhaps, and that having an impact on how a female client may consider herself if her spouse has met somebody a lot younger. Um, Now you don't have to give any blame in divorce. Divorce is totally blame free. So those types of discussions don't come up in quite the same
Mhm.
way. And it is now a good time for me to perhaps mention collaborative law and mediation, Claire, or am I fitting that in somewhere later? What do you think?
I think it will come up a bit later
Yeah,
in
sure.
terms of some of the tips that we've got if you're
Mm,
going through divorce, but we will definitely come back to that.
yeah.
Um,
So
yeah, I think that's interesting. I think this that issue around intimacy and communication probably comes up more in my work now than it does perhaps in your work now because you don't have to draft those petitions anymore in terms of
mm.
unreasonable behaviour. Yeah.
And actually it's a good thing to not have
Mm,
to draft them, because you are raising issues that are very sensitive, that could be very triggering for both people.
mm,
Um, and there's been some kind of think tanks, and I know you and I talked about this as well, about solicitors and what questions ought to I be asking clients at the beginning of consultations to get to know them. And I think that it would be safe to say that my view on it would be that I consider myself to be a really approachable and open person. And when I'm discussing when first meeting with people and looking at issues that there may be, I talk generally about health problems and any other impact of things that might be impacting the relationship. So I don't necessarily ask any direct questions about anything to do with the menopause, but I think that in the context of the way that I talk about things, I have often been told things by either party. So when I say either party, by either it being either the female that I've met with or the male.
yes, absolutely. Okay. Um, so the next thing that we wanted to have a quick look at was the sorts of things that as women we can do perhaps to help ourselves. And I don't want to spend too long on this because there is lots of research around this, and I think we want to maybe to really focus on the issue around how you can help yourself if you're going through a separation or you're thinking of a separation. But there's um, lots of resources on, for example, Louise Newson's website, Balance. There's also lots of information on the NHS websites, and as I said before, we'll put all those up at the end. But there are a few things that we can do to help support ourselves as women through this. The first one, I think, is to educate ourselves and to be aware of what's happening as far as we can for ourselves and to talk about it like we are. You talk about it with your friends, talk about it with your family, tell your solicitor if you are talking about separation, taking legal advice, tell your solicitor and seek individual advice around best treatments for you. And there is a lot online about how you can help yourself in terms of changing your diet, exercise, nighttime routines, lowering your cortisol levels, and so on, and things like that. So I won't spend too long on that, but go and look up the information on the resources that we'll give you at the end, and that should be hopefully really helpful. I wanted to think about if you are a man or a partner of a woman in who's in menopause, because of course this can happen, of course, in same-sex relationships too. What might you be worried about? And I was thinking about this, and the symptoms themselves may mean that your partner might suddenly seem very different to you, that they might have changed, that their moods might have changed, that they might almost seem to be like a different person. And I've certainly heard some of my friends say that that's what their partners have said to them. Um, And those things just have a huge impact. So I guess for those people, it might look like rejection, it might look like hurt, and perhaps it might feel like, it's the relationship that's at fault. And indeed, your partner might actually be saying that they think it's the relationship that's at fault. So, what can you do to help if you're a partner of somebody who's experiencing some of these symptoms? Again, I think you can educate yourself. You can do lots of reading around it. Um, Ask your partner, be curious about their experience, be curious about what it is they're feeling, be curious about what it is that they're going through. And I think you can also use some of the strategies that we've talked about before in sessions, sort of slowing down your responses, stopping and breathing and thinking before you respond. Perhaps if you're tempted to snap back or respond in a short kind of a way. And I think importantly to understand that it isn't personal. And Louise Newson has some really useful information on the Balance website for partners, people who are going through menopause, which could be really, really useful to read. I don't know if there's anything that you want to add to any of that, Lauren.
I think that my only thoughts on it in respect of like clients that I've seen, but also in people that I know in my personal life as well, is that um, there isn't an answer really to any of this. And even the medical professionals say that they don't diagnose the menopause in the way that other things are diagnosed. They can there's certain things that they can do, and obviously the physical changes to a woman's body obviously are obvious. And even people that I know that that are older and have been through the menopause, they still look back questioning certain things. And when we've been preparing for it and talking about it now, um, that we can't definitively say anything, and everybody's different, and it might be that a person's going through the menopause and they're actually different on a daily basis with hormonal mood swings or things like that. And that's really, really difficult to communicate and difficult for you to think about yourself, let alone communicate it to somebody else. So I think my message about this would be that everybody needs to, whatever position you're in, whether you're the one going through the menopause, whether it's your spouse or whether it's somebody in your family, is to keep that kindness and awareness at the forefront, because nobody's got the answers. And I think that it's if somebody's trying to, you can't fix it in the same way that you might be able to take paracetamol and your headache goes. So it's yeah, a very difficult topic, I would conclude.
Yes, and so patience, kindness,
Mm, yeah,
curiosity
yeah, yeah.
seems to be the important would seem to me to be the really important words there. Mm. So the next thing that we wanted to talk about, and something that I see quite often in my practice, is um, a client will approach me and they will be thinking about separation. They'll be thinking about leaving their partner, and wondering whether menopause is something that is impacting on their thought processes and so on. And so, again, like you were just saying, there isn't an answer to this, of course. So, a couple of questions that I think are possibly quite helpful might be, first of all, to think about, is menopause highlighting a fundamental underlying issue in the relationship, or is it a temporary issue, something that's going to pass? And so perhaps not making decisions really, really quickly, taking your time to really explore them for yourself, and perhaps exploring them with a coach or a therapist, is a really good thing to do. And also to think about communication. What are your expectations in the relationship? What are your partner's expectations in the relationship? What might have changed, to really drill down into looking at the circumstances that you're in, to evaluate it in a really um in a really sort of curious, sensible way.
Yeah, and I think that's also from my perspective important, um from what role different professionals are playing it in that part of your life. And although I would like to think that I'm an, as I said, a kind and approachable person, and will be as helpful as I can, I'm not trained to deal necessarily with certain areas of this from a medical perspective, from a therapeutic perspective, from the work that you do as well, Claire. So I think it's important to realise that you may need different support from different areas.
Yes. And so perhaps seeing a specialist menopause expert as well. Louise Newsom, for example, I know I keep mentioning her, but she runs a really successful clinic, and there are menopause clinics all over the country that you could go and talk to somebody
Mm.
who really is an expert in this and can give you, real specialised
And
advice.
the person I mentioned at the beginning ended up being referred to one of those clinics from her doctor because she'd been to the doctors, and they started trying to help her and then realized that they couldn't. So
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I think, not all doctors are sufficiently trained even, or that's the wrong word, or not all doctors have the expertise to be
yes.
specialists in this area because by definition they are GPs, they're general practitioners. So yeah, seek that specialist support. And then the other thing we wanted to talk about was, what if you are in menopause and you're getting divorced at the same time? The combination of potentially some of those symptoms, anxiety and brain fog, and some of those other symptoms we talked about, can leave you feeling really paralyzed and can leave you feeling very scared of all the decisions that you now suddenly have to make at a time when you're perhaps already feeling not at your best, you're, confused and scared. And we've already said, share with your solicitor. But I think it's also really important to say, don't rush, don't rush the process. Take your time to make those decisions. Take your time to get the information that you need to be able to make very clear, informed decisions. And if you can, stay out of court. Lauren, it might be helpful for people just to mention perhaps that there are lots and lots now of out of court procedures that you can use, aren't there, to help you get through this period.
Yes, yes. So yeah, I touched on it earlier. So the court process, of course, can add extra anxiety and stress for everybody involved. Sometimes it's necessary to have to do it, and we will guide you through each stage of that. Often the necessity for going through a court process may be because there's some undisclosed information, or it may be that fundamentally there's a disagreement about something such as selling a property. But you mustn't be afraid of that. That's the family court is there to assist resolution. But the other options as well are having mediation, and that can either be done with or without solicitors. There's also collaborative law, of which I'm a collaborative practitioner, and that involves both people having their own collaborative solicitor, but you sit down together, and you don't have reams of correspondence going back and forth. You actually deal with everything within those meetings, and other professionals can be brought into those meetings as well. And also the relatively new process that we're able to utilize is called Resolution Together. And on the Walker Family Law website, there's some really brilliant resources on there and information about it. And basically that is a very new thing that we're able to do, where we are able to see both parties together. And we do have to go through various steps to make sure that it's appropriate. But this wasn't allowed to happen before. We've all gone through some very vigorous training, and lots of the team that I'm in are trained in this area. And again, that can be a really, really great way of keeping conflict down, and also people being able to talk about things together. So it may be that these issues that are surrounding the menopause, or surrounding work, or surrounding income, can all be talked about very openly in these forums. They can be in the traditional sense of dealing with two solicitors dealing with each other, but sometimes letters can lose things. They can lose feeling. They can lose the message. They're a bit more formal. So What I do when I meet with people is I talk about all these different options to see which would be the most suitable to do. And linking into what you just mentioned before, Claire, is that don't be afraid to keep lists or keep a notepad with you to write things down. Or if you are a person that does like to have their iPad with them, don't be afraid to put notes into your iPad if you think you might forget things. And also to ask people to put things into writing if you want a recap. So I'll often ask people that we've talked about this. Would you like me to follow that up for you in writing?
Mm.
Or don't be afraid, as long as you're happy that you can talk about things in front of that person, that especially from my perspective, if you want to bring somebody with you to your consultations with me, I'm perfectly happy to do that. As I said, on the caveat that person is able to talk openly in front of their friend or family member or whoever it might be. But again, these are all things that, linking back to you saying about not rushing it, is that we can talk about all of these things, and in most cases, there isn't any need to rush.
Mm. Yes, one step at a time.
Mm.
And what you were saying just now reminded me of a client that I worked with a few years ago who um, she was beginning to feel overwhelmed by all the things that she had to do, the decisions that she had to make. So she did what I thought was really quite an inventive thing. She went and got a roll of wallpaper, and she started at the top with the next thing that she had to do, and she created a list, effectively a step-by-step list of all the things that had to happen and all the dates they had to happen on. And slowly, slowly, this bit of wallpaper got rolled up and got shorter and shorter and shorter, which was quite, she found that really helpful. So there are strategies you can use to help yourself take it one step at a time. And a really good question actually to ask yourself almost every day would be, what's the one step that I need to take today? What's the one thing that I need to do today? And just focus on that because it can be so easy to get lost in all the detail and the overwhelm really.
And even with something as which appears to be simple, like emails. Of course, when
Mm,
you get emails, like if I'm communicating with people and you get emails in your inbox, or and they get emails in their inbox that have got chains of emails on, and you're trying to find something. So I try to be really careful in making sure that I send separate emails, especially if it's something important, so that it can be easily found. But again, if something is overwhelming you or you can't find something, don't be afraid to ask, because we have everything electronically. So if you're struggling to find a document that's been sent, and not just by me, by if it was something you sent a client, Claire, or if you've got a financial advisor and they sent something, just ask them. People won't mind. You're not being a bother asking. So to do the best to help yourself, and don't worry about the things that you think other people might be irritated by. I can assure you that they won't be.
yes, that's a really good tip. Thank you, Lauren. Um, Moving on then from the tips around sort of trying to resolve things out of court, um, made me think about whether the family court, if you do end up being in court, how is the family court addressing some of these issues around menopause, or is it addressing them at all?
That's a really, really difficult question, Claire. So it's there isn't any particular case law that I know of that has addressed menopause, and the menopause being a definitive reason for the court making a decision. So just to put it into the context of the court process, that if you need to make an application to the court for the court to help you resolve the finances, there's a process of financial disclosure, and then a series of court hearings, the first ones of which are designed to make sure that all of the information is available. And then there's a court hearing where the judge will listen to very brief facts about the case and the finances and give guidance. But still, at that stage, there is no way, unless there's an agreement, the court won't make any orders. It's only at a final hearing stage that they can impose orders on people. So the actual process itself is still a negotiation with the court's prompts and assistance in trying to do that. And as part of that, what they're looking at is the future financial position of both parties, including capital and income, and also pension. So, from my perspective, the reason that the menopause causes difficulties, and there is becoming more of an awareness on it, and we certainly have training about it, and I know that many different professionals have equality and diversity training about things to do with this area, because it's the symptoms of the menopause are not a protected characteristic under the Discrimination Act. Now, I must caveat this now to say that I am not qualified in any way to give any kind of advice on that. This is just from my own reading. But there are certain things that are linked to the menopause, such as age and future earning capacity, which are things that I have to look at when I'm advising people. So the difficulty that the menopause raises is that if a woman's work has been affected, then how should that be looked at from a future earning capacity point of view? And
Mm.
this is a really, really difficult thing to consider when we were talking about the timescales of how long the symptoms may last. It's how long's a piece of string, nobody knows. And the idea being is that one person's not left in a financial hardship position. So these things do need to be discussed, but unfortunately, I can't give any definitive answers on it, and I have to look at it and get advice. And this is where financial advisors and accountants come in as well, about linking to pensionable age as well. And if in a situation, let me just say that somebody's 50, and then we're looking at their retirement age not being till 67, we're looking at, well, how will their finances play out in that 17 years? And that can be an awfully difficult thing to do at that stage. So
Mm.
I think my only message about it is that yes, it absolutely is a consideration. The judiciary are also more aware of the impact that menopause can have, but there still is the issue of the fact you can't speculate. You can't
Mm.
speculate that something might or might not happen. So I think this area of law, case law, will develop. And all I can do as well is assure my clients that we do the absolute best we can to make sure that following a divorce, the financial position is as fair as we are able to make it at that time with the information that we have.
Yeah. I mean, what really springs to my mind is that given that there's no case law at the moment, somebody at some point might bring some kind of test case, I suppose. But it all adds up to the advice of, you know, try and stay out of court as much as you can so that
Mm.
you are in control of your own negotiations effectively, rather than having something imposed upon you by the court at the final hearing.
Yeah, and if looking, there is again various opinions about these things from um, people in the legal world. Um, but again, a lot of it is just that at the moment, an opinion of a certain person.
Mm.
And it's yeah, it's going to be it's a challenging area. It
Yeah,
is to
yeah.
deal with.
Mm.
And all we can do is help the family come to the financial resolution in the best possible way.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Um, Moving on from there, I think one of the things that we've said right the way through is that we will give some resources and so on. So I'm just going to share. I'm going to share my screen so that I've got a few resources set out on here, and then just talk a little bit through some of those. Okay, so there is lots of information online. There is lots of information on the NHS website. I've put the links up here. Louise Newson, who we've spoken about a few times in our conversation, um, founded Newson Health. They have a very useful, actually, balance app, which I downloaded the other day and had a really good look at. It's very helpful. And her website has a huge amount of resource on there from all sorts of angles, from the angle of children, from the angle of partners and also, of course, from the angle of the women who are going through menopause. And I wanted to mention Dr. Simona Stokes as well, who runs the Menopause CBT clinic. Um, Her website is also really helpful, and she's got lots of really positive tips uh, to help women to handle the menopause. And I think her strapline is something like menopause is unavoidable, suffering is optional. So there's lots of tips on there. And then, of course, Davina McCall making her TV documentary, and she's recently published a book called Menopausing, the positive roadmap to your second spring. And there's a link on there to that as well. Um, and another, I thought I'd just end with this. Another lady, Bryony Gordon, who's written a book called Mad Woman. She describes the menopause as truly liberating if you're prepared to listen to what it's saying. All the grim things it brings up mentally, the lack of self-esteem, the tendency to self-sabotage are the issues to deal with. If you want to enjoy the next 40 years of your life, sort them now and you will forever be free. So I guess that really coincides with what I was saying earlier around, you know, talk to people, get support if you need it, um, get the input of people who really are experts in this area, so that you can move through this period for yourself as with as little these symptoms as possible, if you can. And I will just close that down again.
And some of the issues that we've touched on, as we said, that we're not qualified to give advice on, but between us we have a brilliant diary of connections and professionals that we've known of or our clients have used. So please don't be afraid to contact us just to ask for any of those referrals. And if there are issues in respect of employment law as well, then I can certainly give referrals in that respect as well, seeing as from my research that seems to be a really prevalent thing that comes up. So
Mm.
yeah, you use us not only for the work that we do with you, but also as a resources of referrals as well.
Yeah, a resource hub, if you like.
Mm.
Yeah. Thank you ever so much, Lauren. That was I hope that that's been a really useful discussion for our viewers. Um, we are next meeting on the 13th of November, and we're talking, I'm getting divorced, do I have to go to court? I often see people who are quite confused by whether they actually have to go into a courtroom and appear in front of a judge. So we will be talking about that next month. So all that remains really for me is to say thank you, Lauren. Thank you
Yes,
for
thank you,
your
Claire.
time and your input on this one. It's been very interesting to do the research.
Certain, yeah, it certainly has, and um, yep, look forward to our next session, Claire.
Thank you, Lauren.